we have to continue the work of exposing the agenda of the BRICS countries and the development model that they are on. And we've got a lot of work to do on that. And I don't think we should take it lightly and simply say, it's BRICS from below now. There's a lot of work that we've got to win the labor movement to. You can see what a difference it makes. In our country, it makes a huge difference when a mass movement like NUMSA, metal workers, biggest affiliate, says and comes out and says, we are looking for a different model and we are going to actively fight neoliberalism. It changes the game. It gives us the space to make a much more far-reaching critique than we could have done because we are weaker in many of our popular organizations. Which brings me to the second point. Let us not take for granted the day-to-day slow work of building our local organizations. There is not going to be international solidarity unless we have base organizations. And if we examine our situation in Zimbabwe, in Nigeria, in Zambia, in Malawi, in South Africa, they are very, very weak. They are very weak precisely because of the confusion that went with the promise of freedom, of independence, of liberation, of Lula, of all of those things. We have to recover that. We have to recover it in a context in which we recover the traditions that built a socialist movement many, many years ago. So the defeat that followed the collapse of the Soviet Union is something that we are still struggling with. And we have to overcome the hangover from our foreign minister who can say, my credentials lie in that I attended the Leninist school in Moscow, blah, 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 and it has some sort of resonance. Huh? So we have to defeat that, we have to expose it, and we have to build a different type of emancipatory politics that doesn't confuse us with lack of democracy, doesn't put us in the camp of saying we are going to build a socialism based on destroying our nature and our communities through extractivism, etc. It's got to be a far-going liberation that we are talking about. Lastly, I think this issue of solidarity is not something so easily invoked. And I think I want to refer back to the problem Maria Julia was raising. Because there are some winners, not just in the elite, there are some winners. And part of the thing that we're dealing with in South Africa in the labor movement is that in the initial period after 1994, some sections of organized workers got some benefits. They saw something in the new democracy in South Africa. And there are other sections of the working classes, the oppressed, the dispossessed, etc., that get bought off or gain something from these processes. And I think what we are seeing, in particularly in South Africa and probably across the board, is how those processes are being eroded, and so that there are new possibilities of alliances. As we speak, it's not just about union and community organization alliances, but it's also unions and unions. In Rustenburg, in Anglo Platinum, we're seeing NUMSA organized at the smelters coming on strike, whilst the mine workers organized by AMCU on strike, going across federal union federation differences. It's not easy, but absolutely critical. And then to make an alliance between those workers and the communities affected by mining is another major step that needs to be made. And I think it's these discussions that allow us to start to think about that process and say, we've got to unite movements affected by Vale, whether they are at the workplace, whether they're in the community, and whether they are in other sectors of our society, in the environmental movements and so on and so forth. I think this is what is on our agenda. So when we talk about BRICS from below, it's building on these small foundations. But I think ultimately it's recovering a sense of what we were trying to do in the World Social Forum by saying whether we're struggling around mining or whether we're struggling around the question of wages, whether we're struggling around the access to basic services, these are part of a general struggle against the system. And it's that system that we have to build the consciousness of our people around that needs to be replaced. What it ultimately is replaced by is something I think that struggle itself gives us the cornerstones. We can't just pull a blueprint, but I think that's why I would like to say that the struggle against BRICS from above is a very fundamental part of a struggle for our ultimate liberation. So I really do want to thank all of your contributions. I want to say that it's important that we build, and hopefully we have a chance to share with you over the last bits of drink, the People's Dialogue, the way in which it's trying to build this solidarity between movements in Latin America and Southern Africa, women fighting racism in Latin America, women fighting patriarchy in South Africa, just as one particular example. We need to find more of that. We need to deepen the Vale experience. We got to build communities and movements fighting Anglo, because Anglo is also like Vale all over, and so on and so forth. And I think these are the things that we need to find, the instruments and the movements, networks to do that. So thank you. Let me ultimately say, Amandla! Amandla! Viva the people's struggle, viva! Viva! Panzi BRICS, Panzi! Panzi! Panzi imperialism, Panzi! Panzi! Panzi sub-imperialism.